Welcome to Family Law Talk. Family Law Talk. Presented by Kirk Stange of Stange Law Firm, PC. Stange Law Firm is a multi-state family law firm. Now, here's your host, Kirk Stange.
Welcome to Family Law Talk. We have an interesting topic today. The topic is psychosexual evaluations in child custody matters. And this topic today is based on an article on our blog, familylawheadquarters.com, dated July 22nd, 2025. And the title of that article is, What is a Psychosexual Evaluation? So as a follow-up to the episode today, go on over to familylawheadquarters.com and read this blog article for more information. But let's go ahead and jump into the topic at hand. Sadly, in some child custody matters, sexual abuse allegations can arise. One party might allege that the other parent has sexually abused the children, or maybe that they've sexually abused other children and that they could pose a risk to the kids who are part of the child custody matter. Again, these are sad cases. These are cases that nobody wants to see. Obviously, this topic is one that obviously causes, grief and anguish and sorrow on the part of the individuals who are involved in these types of cases. I mean, these are not fun cases for attorneys too, okay? And candidly, in some cases, a party might be falsely accused of sexual abuse, so maybe they didn't even do it. Or it could be a situation where maybe they had criminal charges against them, but maybe they were acquitted of the criminal charges and they still want to have visitation and contact with their kids. But then the whole issue comes into play, which is, are they a risk to the kids? And if they were around the kids in an unsupervised manner, would there be a risk of sexual abuse? And in some cases, one parent might allege that the other parent shouldn't have any visitation at all. If they think that they've committed sexual abuse, then their position might be that the other parent shouldn't be around the kids at all. Okay, these are tough cases. These are difficult cases for courts. And the topic is the concept of a psychosexual evaluation. So if you're listening to this episode today, you're probably wondering, what is this and why is this important? Okay, these are niche psychological evaluations that can be conducted on parties, except that they're a little bit different. The whole issue with a psychosexual evaluation is this, which is ultimately to come to a conclusion about whether or not a party is a risk to sexually abuse the children that are part of the custody case. And so an evaluator is going to go through these testing methods with whoever the individual is who's accused of sexual abuse, or maybe they say, no, I didn't do this. I was falsely accused of sexual abuse. I never did this. I didn't do this. And these allegations are false, and they're just really designed to try to keep me away from the kids. Okay, so in some of these custody cases where these sexual abuse allegations are out there, and take a case where there's really no tangible evidence of it, right? And again, this is a thorny topic. This can be very much in the weeds, okay? But in some cases with sexual abuse, there could be physical trauma, and sometimes there could be a rape kit or something like that, and it can be objectively shown whether or not somebody's been subjected to some kind of sexual abuse. But candidly, in some cases, if there was a rape kit at all, it came back negative, and maybe there's no signs of sexual abuse, there's no physical harm that a doctor or anybody could find to really prove that it happened. And so this gets to be thorny. But look, a psychosexual evaluation, what this is this would typically be a PhD, so a psychologist, somebody who has this kind of specific background and training. And what they do is have an individual take psychological tests, okay? And these psychological tests can vary. So we're talking paper, pencil test, and they do various objective testing, they would say. Now, some will critique it and say it's not really objective, it's subjective. But those who are in favor of these testings typically say that, no, this is objective. Okay, so you're talking paper, pencil test where there's scores. And these tests then show a propensity for somebody to be somebody who might commit sexual abuse, or it might show no propensity, okay? The other part of the psychosexual evaluation is typically a background history. So the psychologist is going to meet the individual who's been accused of sexual abuse, go through a detailed sexual history background. Sometimes they'll even have them take an intelligence test, or what's sometimes called an IQ test, which can measure an individual's intellectual abilities. And again, it can help the evaluator determine, is this individual somebody who's a risk to commit sexual abuse, or is this somebody who's not a risk at all, and maybe somebody who's been falsely accused, okay? There could be other sort of unsavory things that can take place at this psychosexual evaluation. For example, in male subjects, okay, they can measure arousal. And again, this is thorny, this is in the weeds, and I don't want to be too specific here. But ultimately, there can be stimuli shown to individuals, and then the issue is does the individual become aroused to that certain stimuli, and based on that, and this we're talking particularly with males. And so as part of the stimuli, if there's an arousal to certain stimuli, then that could be relied upon by an evaluator to say, hey, this individual perhaps is a risk to commit sexual abuse because there's arousal to stimulus that shouldn't arouse an individual, something to that degree, okay? So these are psychosexual evaluations. In terms of more specifically how these can impact a child custody case, I mean, the reality is they can have a big impact on a child custody case, okay? If an evaluator believes that an individual has committed sexual abuse in the past, that they're a risk to do it in the future, and they come to that conclusion based on the paper pencil test, based on the history, based on the IQ test, and then the arousal, the stimulus, and whatever else they rely upon, then the reality is that an individual's access to their kids could be limited, right? In some circumstances, they might just simply get supervised visitation. They might not be left alone with the kids. In other instances where the kids have been victimized, and then having contact with that parent who's victimized them could cause great harm. An individual might have no visitation with that parent whatsoever. Okay, on the flip end, if somebody's been falsely accused and they've never done this before, right? These are just false allegations that the other parent is raising to try to keep an individual away from the kids. Then if the results of the evaluation is that this individual is no risk to the kids, and that this individual has never committed sexual abuse in the past, and there's just no reason to believe that they would do it in the future, and that these are just simply false allegations. And sometimes you can also piggyback it on the lack of physical evidence, right? Maybe a rape kit, which I talked about before, took place, came back negative, and there's no other physical evidence to show that this actually took place. And then you piggyback it with the psychosexual evaluation that shows that an individual is no risk, then this can result in an individual getting normal visitation with their kids, right? Not supervised, not no contact, but normal visitation with their kids. And in some cases where the other party is raising false allegations of sexual abuse just to keep a parent away when it didn't take place, it could result in the parent who's been falsely accused actually getting sole custody of the kids. And that could be sole physical or sole legal, you name it. You know, particularly where a parent is raising these false allegations and they know, or there's a reasonable degree of certainty that they know these allegations are false. They're just raising it in a bad faith manner in order to keep a parent away, all right? Again, some critique of psychosexual evaluations is while some people would argue that a lot of this testing is objective, some would say it's subjective, that different psychologists could do the evaluation on a particular individual and come up with different results. So there's some subjectivity here. One of the other big drawbacks of psychosexual evaluations is that if somebody omits or withholds material information to the individual doing the evaluation, or they're dishonest, and they're not candid and they don't tell things that they should tell, then this can obviously skew the results as well. And so that can be a potential weakness as well, okay? Again, this is a nasty topic. This isn't really a fun topic. Hopefully, most of the listeners never have to experience these types of cases, but the reality is they do happen. Circumstances where sexual abuse has taken place, these are terrible cases. And then there are cases where individuals have been falsely abused and there's been no sexual abuse at all. So I wanted to cover this topic today because it does happen, and these can be gut-wrenching types of cases for individuals going through it. All right, as a follow-up to the episode today, go on over to familylawheadquarters.com, read the article titled, "What is a Psychosexual Evaluation?" The date is July 22nd, 2025. This will give you more information on this topic. But thanks for tuning in today. Stay tuned to our next episode coming up. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Family Law Talk with Kirk Stange. Visit StangeLawFirm.com for more about today's topic or to put Stange Law Firm to work for your family today. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely on advertisements. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri or Illinois reviews or approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The information you obtained in this podcast is not, nor is it intended to be, legal advice. You should consult an attorney for advice regarding your individual situation. We invite you to contact us and welcome your calls, letters, and electronic mail. Contacting us does not create an attorney-client relationship. Please do not send any confidential information to us until such time as an attorney-client relationship has been established. Past results afford no guarantee of future results, and every case is different and must be judged on its own merits. Kirk Stange is responsible for the content. Headquarters, Office 120 South Central Avenue, Suite 450, Clayton, Missouri 63105. Kirk Stange is licensed in Missouri, Illinois, and Kansas.